Hello and welcome. My name is Corin Little and I'm here today with Marilyn Arsem and Paul Couillard. I am residing in the ancestral homelands of the Council of Three Fires, the Adwa, the Ojibwe and the Potawatomi peoples. Out of Sight as an organization is focused in working in public space, in sight, S-I-T-E. And Out of Sight is really about thinking about what is invisible and bringing to light what is invisible in public space and thinking about what we don't talk about, what we don't address. So I am very honored to be here with Marilyn Arsem and Paul Couillard to talk about public space and, both of these, extraordinary people have been working in public space for decades. Marilyn Arsem has been creating performance and live events for more than 40 years and has presented her work in 30 countries around the globe. Based in Boston, Massachusetts, USA, she also teaches performance art workshops internationally and is going to be creating a practice-based workshop for our up-and-coming symposium entitled Flow, Embody, Insight. Many of her works are durational in nature, minimal in actions and materials, and often created in response to specific sites, engaging with the immediate landscape and the materiality of the location, its history, use, or politics. In 1995, she founded the interdisciplinary collaborative of artists, incorporating in 1980 as Mobius Incorporated, a non-for-profit, tax-exempt, artist-run organization with the mission to support the creation of new experimental art. Mobius has presented the work of thousands of artists over its 40+ years. A book on her work, Responding to Sight, the performance work of Marilyn Arsem, edited by Jenny Klein and Natalie Lovelace, was recently published by Intellect Books of the UK, and we're delighted to be giving symposium attendees a 30% discount between April 22nd and May 13th for the duration of the symposium. Paul Couillard is a queer performance artist and curator and scholar. He is co-founder of Fado Performance Art Center and the 7A Star 11D International Festival of Performance Art, both based in Toronto, and the editor of the book series Canadian Performance Art Legends. Paul's solo work acts to build community and address trauma through responsive, durational performance explorations of our bodies as shared vessels of sensation, experience, knowledge, and spirit, and is currently working to defend his dissertation entitled Rethinking Presence with a Thinking Body, Intra-active Relationality and Animate form, which investigates the role and presence in enabling shared meaningfulness. The text integrates insights from phenomenology, neuroscience, and performance art to untangle the human tendency to treat the body and consciousness as distinct and mutually alien entities. One of the chapters focuses on Marilyn Arsem's 2001 work, Meridian. So I'm going to hand it over to you both to talk about what's coming up.
Well, thank you, Karen. It's nice for that have that little introduction. Because I'm just at the point of defending my thesis, I haven't heard anybody actually describe those words, so it's just funny to hear it. Hi, Marilyn. How are you doing this evening?
Good. How are you? Even though you've been writing it for a while.
Too many years. It's a durational performance in itself.
Yes. But it was really wonderful to get the text and the revised version. And it's really, I'm really interested in the way you talk about presence, and really from the perspective of a practitioner, which doesn't always happen.
Yes, well, we'll see if it gets published. I mean, publishing is the most difficult part of all, which is why I have to say congratulations on your great book, Responding to Sight. I know that was several years in the making.
10, at least.
That for a long time.
Yeah. But Natalie said, it allowed for more work to be included. So I that's good.
There's always a silver lining, right?
Yeah.
It's like with this pandemic, we're always looking for the silver linings in it. And one of the things about the symposium is it is an occasion to finally kind of celebrate the publishing of the book, which of course came out during the pandemic, and so there hasn't been any sort of public face for it. So
no parties, no launches, many planned and all canceled.
So I guess this panel will be kind of the first party publish celebration event for the book, which is fantastic. Yeah. So we really appreciate that Insight was able, the symposium was able to do that. Yeah. And it's funny hearing those intros because we're both artists who, aside from being practitioners, have started spaces for performance, which is kind of a rarity in itself, that have continued for years and years. And I was also thinking, there I am publishing books, and now you've got this book published, and we were talking recently about how difficult it is to find people who publish documentation of performance art. I mean, yeah. This book's kind of a hybrid because it has, theoretical texts and stuff, but it's also an opportunity just to publish documentation material of performance that otherwise is very hard to get a hold of.
Yeah. In that conversation, we talked about you insisting that the instructions of the instructional work that you talked about in your chapter were actually included in the book, which I think is really useful, particularly for student artists, to see not just a theoretical discussion of the work, but to actually see something about the construct of it and how it operated as with the artists in that particular piece. There were 5, is that right? 6 of us?
You mean at St. Norbert's? There were 5
yeah,
of us.
5 of us, yeah. Doing the work together, following the instructions together. So
yeah, that's it's so funny the way performance art even gets documented. I mean, we'd all like to have books about our work, but even what's included, some people hate the video of the work, some people want photos of the work, some people want texts. I've always been most interested actually in people's memories of the work, even if they're faulty. To me, that's the most interesting documentation.
Yeah.
But one of my arguments for including those instructions was, well, this is documentation that's as important to the work as a photograph of it.
And probably more informative. or between the photograph and the instruction, you begin to understand what the action really was that each person did. Yeah. Or how they interpreted the instruction. Yeah.
So kudos on the book. And I'm looking forward to being on the panel to talk about it because, actually, we haven't
come together
as a group, thanks to the pandemic, which I guess has also influenced the workshop that you'll be kind of presenting for the symposium. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm actually designing a workshop really specifically for this symposium and for this very particular moment in time. I'm calling it Being in Place, and it really is about trying to think about the kind of work that we might make as we emerge from our lockdowns and from the pandemic. I mean, in a lot of places there are still lockdowns, and
Toronto, we're in one right now.
Yeah, and I just was in communication with an artist in Dublin, and they're in one also. Mm-hmm. So the idea of trying to design a workshop that accommodates the different contexts that people are living in, because it is an online workshop, made me really think about how do you, what is the work that you can make, like on your street or in front of your house, and really what is the kind of, like what are the actions that we as artists might actually want to do at this point in time? It's like, what do we want to give as a piece of art to our immediate community?
Mm-hmm. And I think, it's an online workshop, but you're thinking about work that's not online, correct?
Right. So the online part is probably going to be much more conversational and some small exercises, but the workshop is set up so that we meet every other day. And then over 2 weeks too. So there's time in between. And I really am going to ask people to go outdoors and engage in some very modest actions as a kind of way to get back in practice. I don't think I'm alone in feeling like I'm a little out of practice of doing and doing in public. So it's also a question about what is art, like what, like is, if you decide to, if you decide to organize all the garbage cans on your street in a very particular pattern, can you call that art, and why can you call it art? And will people recognize it as art? Or how do you indicate that it's art? So all those questions about the problem of doing something in public where you don't have the framework of a gallery or a performance space to identify your action as art making. It's like, what then how do you frame it in a way that allows people to see it as a conscious, artful act?
Well, and especially when, as you say, we're all out of practice. Even, I mean, just for anybody walking on the street these days, you have a whole different impression of your surroundings to begin with. I mean, the sort of anxiety if you get on a bus and, oh, what if somebody's not going to have a mask, or
Yeah.
Oh, what's going to happen? Who's wearing a mask outside? Who isn't wearing a mask? All those. So we're already looking at public space differently to begin with.
Yeah.
And
Or when you're on a sidewalk, the protocol now is one person steps into the street
Yeah.
to be able to make the 6 feet
Yeah.
distance. So yeah, we are really looking at our space around us quite differently.
And everything is kind of apprehended a little bit in terms of threat right now.
Yeah.
So the idea of art, which, I mean, of course, art can be threatening too, but often a lot of artists are doing work that's more, it's about illumination or celebration or these kind of beauty, these kind of other kinds of appreciation for environment. So to be trying to integrate that into an environment that's very fraught right now, I think is a really interesting question to kind of, grapple with.
Yeah. And, I think that the way, there's also the complication of interacting with strangers when so much of the information, is masked, literally.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, interestingly, I find I say hello to everyone now on the street, which I don't think I did pre-pandemic. But now I feel like like I need to connect, or I need to acknowledge that we're both outdoors, and I've gotten into conversations with strangers that I wouldn't have gotten into prior to this. I would always, like have been on my way, or there's a kind of bubble of privacy that existed before, and now it is a little bit different.
Well, and also there's less people on the street, so
Yeah.
it's a little easier, The urban jungle is not a jungle these days.
Right.
But yeah, and I mean, I know my own, fears around just going outside, and that thing about keeping distance and being very nervous when somebody gets too close to my space because of all this fear of, vaccine, or fear of
Right.
virus, and all that kind of stuff. So performance is so much about people coming together. It's about a direct, for me, it's about a live, in-person, face-to-face kind of relationship. I have done performances online, but that's really not my thing. It's really, it's really not where the impulse to do something called performance for me comes from. It's really about intimate interactions.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah.
So we're in this crazy time. I mean, on the one hand, the virus kind of proves us right in terms of thinking about our bodies as leaky borders, and how we are actually very intimately interconnected. The virus proves that in all the wrong ways. So how do we adjust to kind of find some way to kind of gently interject into this moment?
Yeah. That's the question. Well, I'm interested to, the conversation about it will be just as important as what people try.
Mm.
And I will be encouraging people to engage in very small acts, gentle.
Yeah, it's funny because performance art has a reputation of risk, right? I mean, but risk can be a very delicate, nuanced thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of where we have to be right now, because everybody's in such a high panic mode to begin with.
Right. Yeah.
So that's so what are they, how long is the workshop?
So it's 4 sessions that are each 90 minutes long, and it's like I don't remember the schedule, Thursday and Saturday, I think. And then there's the opportunity to actually do online performances, and Karen is actually going to train us all in live streaming. So hopefully we'll all be able to make work. I mean, I'm not presuming that what the participants in my workshop do in the workshop is what they end up live streaming. I mean, they can do something completely different.
Right. Or the live stream could also be a different kind of report, or a different kind of contextualization of the work as well.
Yeah. So they don't directly connect, but it's just, the opportunity for that. I mean, there's also, happy hours online as part of this symposium. So there will be a chance to just talk with people too. So that, I'm looking forward to being part of the community for those 3 weeks.
Right. But I mean, knowing a little bit about you and your research and the way you work, I presume you'll have homework for your participants.
Oh, yes. And writing.
So just
to make you understand about yourself.
Yeah. So just because it's only 90 minutes online for days, all that time in between, they're going to be having to do other work.
Yeah.
That's when the real work will happen.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Wonderful.
What do you want to say about the roundtable discussion? Have you guys had any?
Well, we haven't even, I mean, it
kind of, am I revealing you haven't met yet?
Kind of came out of the blue. I mean, Natalie approached, I guess, some of us and said, what do you think? And, my understanding is that Natalie and Jenny are going to put together a set of questions for us to talk about as a group, but that hasn't been finalized yet. So it's kind of like, what will I know actually talking about? But I mean, as I say, I'm looking forward to it, because I actually don't know Lucian or Kathy. So,
Yeah, I mean, what because of the amount of time that the book was in development, the range of writers is really great. I mean, it's, not just between academics and artists, but also people in really different parts of the world. And with, different focuses of their own research, brings a different perspective to the work.
I mean, I think that reflects the fact that you've had a substantial career. You have worked in many countries yourself, and in many different kinds of situations. I mean, I proposed to write about a certain little tiny strand of your work that had a certain amount of interactivity to it, but you've done many kinds of work, and indoors, outdoors, very site-specific kind of works. I mean, I think even when you do an indoor work, it's still site-specific,
Yeah. It has to be. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if this book even completely does justice to your work, but of course it captures some of that range.
Yeah.
There's many works you've done that aren't written about. I mean, I did my whole thesis. One of the chapters is about a work that's barely even, it's not even written about in the book at all. Yeah. I mean, it's mentioned in the bibliography, but
Well, that's why we have to get your book published. But I was I was really happy when, for instance, David Miller ended up writing about some of my work from the 80s, because that was really the groundwork of the later pieces. So I was happy to have that included.
Yeah, I was quite interested that, I mean, you were kind of a director in the early years.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought to go back to something like that? No? You
No,
like being the performer.
I did enough of it. I was always trying to get people to perform the way I would perform it.
Right. Well, that's one of the advantages of being the performance artist. You have total control over the material.
Yep. And if you really screw up, it's only your fault.
But I found it quite, I guess because I wrote about works that had an instructional aspect to it in a way that is a kind of directing, it's more subtle, although as I think I mentioned in my article, you craft your words very carefully. Even if it appears very simple, that's a surface appearance. That simplicity has been honed. It's like your work also has gotten perhaps more minimal over the years as well, and that's a honing that's actually very complex. Because in my own work, I'm also more, I start with all this, and then once I can get it to the smaller it is, the less the items there are, the less, in a way, the more distilled it is. That's when I feel I'm kind of closer to what I actually wanted to say in the first place. So, and I think your work's kind of like that as well.
It also, I think, leaves it open to the audience to use it in the way they need to use it. Yeah.
Yeah, the first lesson to students is always like, don't tell us what we should think about it.
Yeah, you can't control them anyway.
If it's good enough, we'll think something, and you know what? When you find out what we thought and it's not quite what you thought, you'll think that's even better than the idea I had.
Well, I have told students that the audience doesn't come to see your work. They don't really have any interest in what you think. They want to think about their own lives, and they want to use your work to think about their own lives. So
if you do it well, then you're an opportunity for them to have you've provided a framework for them to discover something about themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a nice idea. And maybe that's something you could take into your workshops too. Well, I think,
I think this is probably enough.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, Karen, we want you back.
That is a really great place to end. And I just wanted I actually wanted to come on with I made this mask that I was wearing at the beginning of the pandemic. And I've got another one that says smile. And it becomes more difficult to wear a smile in America at a certain point. And I think you brought up the important point about, public space being this fraught space at this moment in time. And, we are hoping that this conference really brings people together to talk about how we respond to that and how we can really, and Paul, you talked about the intimate connection that performance creates, and that is why public performance is so vital, is that it does provide that antithesis to the fear that we're all grappling with. And so.
Yeah, well, we're in this time where it's like for our own safety, we have to be somewhat apart. And performance is really about that connecting glue that brings us all together. And, you know, it's going to be so important when we get past the worst of this pandemic to find those spaces again that you know, reweave that tissue of togetherness, you know, that we need for our culture.
Well, thank you for tuning in and listening to us this evening, and I hope you do. The early bird tickets are available to April 17th, and then yes, we're looking forward to the Flow Embody Insight Symposium, and I hope you can join us. Thank you so much, Marilyn. Thank you so much, Paul. Lovely to speak with you both. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye.
Bye.